of horrors, terrors through time. So, this year we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This year we're going to be going through the decades of film and telling you about horror movies from the 1930s all the way up to the 2020s. Each decade will have 3 episodes. Each of those episodes will be presented by one by me, one by my good friend Jack Thorne, and another by my good friend Chris Chavez. I'm very excited about these episodes. I hope that you enjoy them. And without further ado, let's get into my first pick. My pick for the 1930s was a film called Freaks. This movie released in 1932. It gets a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes and 88% on the audience score. Now, it was directed by a gentleman named Todd Browning. You might know Todd Browning as the director of the seminal film Dracula, the very same one starring Bela Lugosi. After directing Freaks, Todd Browning, unfortunately, we'll get into this and when we talk about the movie, but it did not do well. It was not received well, and it kind of ended his career. He did several movies after this, but with diminishing returns and not nearly at the same level as things like Dracula. It is worth noting that Todd Browning, before getting into film, was very much into the circus. He actually ran away as a teenager, dropped out of school, and went and joined the circus. As we talk about the plot of the movie and the type of movie that it is, that will make a lot more sense. Now, I wanted to cover the movie Freaks because I had seen it going around a lot over the years, but I was always confused by it because this is a movie that is supposed to be about circus freaks, which is obviously not a good term, but that's where the title comes from. The idea being that this group of people performs at circuses. They have different sort of physical disabilities, or just physical differences, like the bearded woman, things like that. A person who is, half man on one, like a man on one side and a woman on another side. And I was really intrigued by this film because I felt like this seemed like a really scary topic for a film in the 1930s to cover. And the reason I avoided it for as long as I did was because I was very concerned that they would do it very poorly and the film would be very exploitative. But I felt like it was time to bite the bullet, watch the movie, and see what I thought and share with you guys. Just a quick overview. It stars Henry Earls and Daisy Earls, Olga Baklanova. I'm not going to get these names very accurate, but I'll try my best. And Henry Victor. The plot is basically that there are a group of circus performers. This is where Todd Browning's history with the circus comes into play. All of the performers, all the actors in the film are actual circus performers with genuine, physical disabilities and differences. From things like dwarfism to a set of conjoined twins, and other just different differences, I'll say. Now, that lent itself to my fear in the exploitation element of the film, but as we get into the plot, you'll see that that's not really what happened. So there is a woman named Cleopatra. She's a trapeze artist, I believe, and she is normal. We'll use quotes around that. She's a normal, average person with no, noticeable differences. She finds out that a gentleman named Hans, who is a little person, has this large inheritance. So she tries to convince him that she's in love with him. Successfully, she does. And then she intends to poison him and then kill him and take his money. she is able to convince him to marry her, and they have a wedding ceremony. And at the wedding ceremony, she is poisoning him, and she is also getting drunk. And while she's getting drunk, she kisses a dude named Hercules, who is actually like her secret conspirer. And so Hans is starting to catch on that something is up, but the rest of his friends and his community of circus performers don't necessarily see this. They're all sitting at the wedding feast and decide that it's time to initiate her into the group. And so they pass around, I think it's called a love cup or something along those lines, where everybody drinks from the same cup to show that they are, they have unity. And they're singing this sort of, or chanting this sort of like, it's like, gobble gooble, one of us. It's a really intense part of the film. I think it's a fantastic part of the film where they are trying to show her that they accept her as one of them, and she's freaking out because she's terrified of the thought of becoming one of them. And so by the time the cup gets to her, she like flips out. She's like, I'll never be one of you. You're all freaks. You're all terrible. You're all disgusting. And they all run away, and it's just her and Hans there. And she like puts him up on her shoulders, and she's dancing around with him, really like mocking him and his size and his differences from her. She later tries to apologize, but he figures out what's going on. But as he figures out what's going on, he also like comes ill. This is all while they're on, I think that they're in like horse-drawn carriages or something like that, going from one place of like one performance place to another. He starts getting really sick, realizes he's been poisoned, but there's also a big storm raging. He has enlisted the help of a few of his friends to confront her about what he knows. And while that is happening and that confrontation is happening, there's another confrontation happening between Hercules and someone else who had discovered what was going on. And like everything starts to like crash, and because of this big storm that's raging. And I know this is like a 90-year-old movie, but I don't want to give away the ending because it's like just an absolutely just top 10 ending in a horror film, in my opinion. So I would definitely recommend going to check it out. It's free on all the streaming platforms. It's only an hour long. It was originally an hour and a half, but a bunch of the film got cut. And that, unfortunately, that footage was lost because this was before, the digital age. But the movie's only an hour long. It's very much worth giving a viewing. So anyway, that is the movie Freaks. My thoughts on it are that where I was afraid that it was going to be exploitative, it actually was like this very compassionate and empathetic look at this community of people, which makes a lot of sense considering Todd Browning's history, and being a part of that community. And you walk away with the thought of like, who are the real freaks here? Is it the people that are physically different, or is it the monsters that would try to exploit people or steal from people, while also looking down on them? I also think that it's worth noting that this movie was released like in the middle of the Great Depression, and I think that there's a real like metaphor there of the rich and the poor and working class, the freaks, the circus performers representing like the average person, and the rich being represented by like Cleopatra and Hercules, and sort of the classism there, and the taking by this class of people, and the community and the togetherness of this class of people. And so I think that that's a really interesting factor that you can't ignore based on when this film was released. Now, whether or not the film was scary, it's not scary in the traditional sense. You know, it's not like a slasher or like a thriller or anything like that. But it is scary in the sense of human evil and selfishness and classism and just othering that happens, that still happens today, that happened back then. It's a very sad film in a lot of ways. It's a very powerful film in a lot of ways. There are things that are more traditionally like horror movie scary about it. Things like the music and the circus and all that sort of element. The fact that it was released in the 1930s like just makes it eerie in itself. But this is not a traditionally scary movie like what you would think. Is it a good Halloween movie? I could see a scenario where it's like you're projecting it like at a party, like in the background, and the music is great, and like the black and white is great, and like all these different like characters on the screen are great, but you're not really paying attention. Like I could see it filling that role. But to really appreciate this movie, you need to sit down and like really take it in. And it's not a fun movie. And what's scary about it is not fun. And so if you're looking for fun, scary, which is kind of like what I look for around Halloween, I'd say maybe pass on this. This is a movie where you want to sit down and really kind of take it in, and take in the meaning of it. As far as rating is concerned, I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. I thought it was exquisite. I'd love to see that extra 30 minutes of footage that was cut. I will say, like, I ding this movie a little bit because while on screen the messages of acceptance and togetherness, it sounds like behind the scenes, like the circus performers were treated very differently, very badly. They were not allowed to be around the other actors, because of their differences, apparently. That's a little disappointing. Not totally off-brand for the 1930s, but it definitely, brings it down a little bit, where it's like, the message of the film is this, but in reality, they're doing the complete opposite. A little bit of hypocrisy there, a little disappointing. Anyway, that's my review of Freaks. I definitely say you should check it out, but be prepared to kind of like have a more thoughtful viewing. This is not a fun time, silly horror movie. I'm Dan. This is the Movie Cellar, Month of Horrors, Terrors Through Time. Tune in tomorrow to hear another installment.